And Felicia just emailed me. She will be here shortly.
There it is. Sorry about that. Whoops, that's the old one. Wait. I don't even know. Sorry. What was the date?
June 28th.
Okay, I got it. No. I was okay. All right. So approval of the minutes.
So move.
I'll second it.
Second.
Oh, fight to the finish there. Okay. So the minutes are approved. And we'll start with our old business, the updates on outreach opportunities.
So I will give you a quick update on the mural project as an outreach opportunity. So we I met with Matt Conway of the of Rise Up CT. Moving this forward, we had organized in the committee to select an artist. And again, we selected the site of the community center. And the next steps essentially are the solicitation of community input, which is going to take place in the form of a kind of Google form survey. They've got a draft template that they use out of Rise Up. He's going to share that with us soon. And then we're welcome to add any kind of questions that we want to it. And then I think, in coordination with you, Margaret, we can begin pushing that out to gather that input. In addition, at the same time, we will be pushing out the fundraising. So we are on the hook to raise about $5,000, we think, to support the project through crowdfunding. Again, Rise Up provides the platform, right? So, the kind of online fundraising tool. There's some copy that goes on that, including a blurb about the Human Rights Commission, as we're the primary sponsor of the effort. So I said I would get him the brief description of it. We'll just pull it from the website and send it over. But that fundraising then can also serve the purpose of highlighting the mural project, but as well our work. So if there's anything folks want to make sure we include in that, let me know. And hi, Felicia, nice to see you. Following that, then the next steps will be the community paint day. So we'll go through the process of the design and the feedback and all that, and then it'll start being created. Those community paint days, of course, are opportunities for outreach and engagement by the commission. So in addition to putting paint onto walls, if there's other elements of information or conversations that we want to have there, that's an opportunity for us. And then the unveiling, which we're currently trying to target Indigenous Peoples Day as the date for the unveiling, and that will also feature an opportunity for remarks, engagement, but anything else that this committee would like to see happen vis-a-vis the outreach goals. So that's the update there.
Glenn,
So
what about that letter that came from
Kurt.
Kurt, yeah, no, I've taken a look at it, and I'll talk with Ryan about it shortly. But the issues that are raised in that, I think, were addressed in the consideration. One about the texture of the building itself.
Right.
The way we're proceeding is we're actually going to have the artist we've selected actually works on panels. in part because one of the objectives of the committee was to have something that was modular and could have pieces that maybe circulate around town, make appearances at schools, or have other pieces. So we actually anticipate it not being painted directly on the facade, but rather
good, good.
panels that are then installed on the facade. The other concern that was raised about the kind of traffic question, I think that the letter writer believed that we were angling to install this on the facade that is south facing as you go into the building, which is the primary one that's used for publicity for the community center and would be most viewable from that turnaround. We're actually talking about the east-facing facade, which has the kind of nice grassy area right in front of it and faces directly to the town building. So
Good.
I don't think
The ice skating rink.
right. Yes, in the wintertime, it's so for those reasons, I don't, obviously we want to consider what the community member had to say, but I don't think that will divert us from the community center.
Thank you.
Yep, sounds reasonable. Let's see. So as far as the survey that they were talking about, is there anything else that we need in that? Didn't you say there was a survey that goes out from
Exactly,
Rosette?
yeah. So that's the community input, right? Like, who do you want to see on there? And so they, typically they'll ask questions about like, are there particular themes you want represented? And I haven't seen the template yet. I saw a version of one early on from the girl they constructed in Torrington or West Hartford or whatever. But he promised to share it. If there are particular kind of themes that we think of as important, I can confirm that they're there. And if they're not, we can add them as questions in there. I don't know if people have ideas about things that they would definitely like to see included when we gather that community input for the purpose of this mural.
Yeah, I have a thought. Now, I don't know if it's a theme, but in keeping with that, that Stones project? I would love to see some representation of the enslaved people and the people who are the founders of the town represented on the mural. People will be angry.
And indigenous also. I'd love to.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
I mean, let's focus it on what happened here if we possibly can, or some of it.
And the name of that project, Jane, we were trying to remember the last meeting, was Witness Stone.
Witness
Correct,
Stone,
Glenn?
right, yep, thank you. I have no mind left. But there's so much work being done with that, or will be done with that. And if we could pull up a couple of people that were real humans that lived here, that would be wonderful.
I'm really curious about the time frame. I mean, Indigenous
too.
Peoples Day is 8 weeks away. So when would a survey go out? And how much time do they need?
We're hoping to finalize this next week, and then to give a couple of weeks for that input. I think, we have a goal of Indigenous Peoples Day, but I think we have a larger goal to create a, effective, impactful, beautiful, and lasting mural. And if that requires us to look at a date other than Indigenous Peoples Day for the formal unveiling, then I suspect that we'll do that, because I think, if we've learned something in 2021, it's to be gentle with ourselves and the adaptation to the circumstances as they present themselves. So, I am still hopeful, and Matt seems to think that that's doable. If things line up and go smoothly and we don't hit, complications. But I think we'll also adapt if that seems like that deadline is getting in the way of the larger purpose of the initiative.
Okay.
Yeah, and the good thing about also this way of doing it, which is to say, painting on the panels. That means that, right, the artist can work on it regardless of what's happening outdoors at that moment, right? And,
Yes.
and can have, opportunity in the studio. And so it is a little less weather dependent.
So, and going back to your original points, the $5,000, how is that going to be raised? Do we have community support, or is there a letter going out?
Yeah, so I'd love to talk about a strategy there. So again, they'll provide us with the platform, and how we push that out and encourage people to contribute to it, I think, is part of what we as a committee should help strategize on.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's a big one. I mean, that's
Yeah.
really maybe even a whole group conversation.
Yeah, and there is this working group that has folks from the Arts Advisory Commission and other members of the community that are advising on this. But I certainly think that we on this subcommittee can also contribute to that conversation with ideas. $5,000 is not a insignificant amount, but it's also not an enormous sum for a community like Mansfield for a project like this. So I think it's a matter of getting it in front of people and communicating the deadline. Again, welcome your thoughts on strategy here. And Margaret, if you have ideas on that too.
Now, does that money fund the materials, the paint, and the salary of the artist?
Correct, as well as the community paint day production.
Okay. So is that something we want to talk about now, or do we want? I mean, our timing is pretty tight.
Yeah, I would say we should.
Okay.
Well, so I think what we're going to need to create is, first of all, a landing page on our town website about the MLK project. We have not created that as yet, where it would be a link to details about the artist and a link to Rise Up, and a presentation of what it is we are, right? Who we are, what it is we're trying to get done. And then if they have a GoFundMe style platform, we could push it out like we would any other kind of communication, and do it through our traditional, communications tools. But I do think that there's an opportunity for some direct outreach, and whether it's a phone call, to a key person that's then followed up with a letter. But if you think about, sending out to the churches, sending out to our, partners at NAACP. I mean, again, this is a Mansfield initiative, but it's really a mural that will represent the whole region. It's not just for the people of Mansfield. So I think we need to be creative about where there may be some funding. I think immediately of the Austin Foundation. Mrs. Austin has traditionally been very generous with donations. She made a nice little donation when the kids were trying to raise money for gift cards for local businesses, right? I mean, that kind of, so I think that we need to sort of hit all fronts with this, in hand in glove with the publicity about the artist and about the project, and see where it goes. So, and I think we should also tap into our friends at UConn to support us with their whatever way, whatever mechanisms they may have. Why not go to the foundation and ask for the UConn Foundation for a donation toward this project? So I think that it's a matter of making those lists and then, assigning and fundraising is not my specialty, but it's you got to ask, and you got to ask, and you got to ask again, and and present the background for it. So those would be, I don't know if that's a strategy, but those are some tactics I think that we could go at.
Great. Thank you. Margaret. So I heard, a kind of general push out, but then some targeted solicitations with some letters to some of the faith-based community leaders to ask them to, ask their folks to support it. NAACP, Austin Foundation, which I don't know, but I can find out more about. And then Yukon, and we do have Janelle Reynolds from the Office for Diversity and Inclusion on the working group. So I can definitely get her to help with that. Are there any other individuals or groups that we should put on this list for that outreach, that direct?
There is another foundation that serves our region called the Northeast Connecticut Community Foundation. And, they're headquartered in Norwich, and they've been very supportive of initiatives that have been happening in the Northeast corner, as well as the Liberty Bank Foundation, also a very generous group. I don't know, we may be off cycle with their grant application. That may be a long-term thing. I think we may have just missed, they do twice a year application timing. So, but that's another one that we could consider.
Actually, Farmers Cow does that as well, and they have a grant office. But again, I think depends on the dates. I'm kind of thinking back to who some of the kind of surprise donors were when we did Safegrad, and just people from the community. Back then, when David was in school, I walked around Store Center and was able to drum up a ton of support, but there's just not that many restaurants there anymore or businesses there anymore. So, but the Stores Foundation, but that that group, the downtown, like that seems like it might be a good one to hit too.
Yep, they're on the organizing group as well. So yes, I think for business outreach, I think I'll see if they can assist in making those asks. But that's good. And if you think of folks, you can shoot their names to me as I compile these, since I'll be coordinating this outreach. And again, so there's kind of double purpose to the fundraising initiative, as there always is, right? One is the money itself, which we need to make it happen. The other is that's an opportunity for people to literally buy into the project and feel some sense of ownership and connection. So even small gifts of $5, $10, great to have the money, but more importantly, that gives us the names of people who support this kind of work, which again, we then have as a Human Rights Commission going forward for, other activities. If we're having an event or a dialogue, or want people to be engaged, or, have additional, that'll be good for us to have those. So again, I think that's a function of this as well.
Can we create, when does the money have to be raised by?
I don't know the deadline, so I have to confirm that with Matt. I mean, I think we've got a few weeks. It's not it doesn't extend in perpetuity, and that's probably good, because a kind of short, intense period is better than letting it drag on. But maybe by the middle of next month is probably when we need to have it all in.
I was going to say the downtown doing something, selling a T-shirt, or
Well, and so, I mean, there's this piece which we have to do to get the thing created. The launch event, right? There's funds to do a little bit there, but we might want more as a commission to make that a bigger event, right? So we could at the downtown, I think we and that's on the agenda, I think, as another opportunity, if we're going to participate in the Celebrate Mansfield event, those are things that we could also do there. Okay, other questions or thoughts on this as an outreach opportunity for me? Okay,
No, so we can move to the important dates and holidays for events.
sorry.
I know my school district has done a decent job with putting together things that affect our community members. I would guess it's not only our school district. I'm guessing most school districts have them. So it has like Ramadan and the Jewish holidays and Holi and but are we talking specifically? I can't remember. Can someone help me? What was the?
I think this was just a forward-looking, what other kinds of things should we be looking to celebrate as a commission off in the horizon? Is that right, Monica?
Yep, so it was that, and it was also that we wanted to make sure that we didn't schedule our meetings on a date that would be inappropriate.
Yeah, I think September.
So that meeting we did move to, I believe it's the 9th at 7.
So
that
the
it-
8th and the 9th?
No, just the 9th. We
Oh, okay.
moved the meeting so that it wouldn't conflict.
So it's the 9th at
7.
7. But then the following week for this committee, because don't we usually meet
Yeah,
the week after that?
we made a decision about that at our last meeting.
That we just wouldn't meet? I don't have it on my calendar here. Oh, no, I was there.
Wait. Was there a decision about the subcommittee too? I don't know that
I think
one. I
so,
wasn't
because
here.
there was a conflict and I
Yeah,
can't find where I wrote it down.
the subcommittee would be the 15th, and that's
Right.
the night before, which is the holiday or the observance.
So if the 15th is the night before, that means it's sundown Yom Kippur starts.
Yeah.
So clearly we either moved the date or canceled the meeting. Did we get minutes from that meeting? Karen, do you remember?
I think they're in the email that I sent out this morning.
Oh, okay. And it's the communication. Okay, well, then we made a decision about what to do about the 15th. Let me see. if
I don't
can-
see it reflected in the minutes.
Yeah, I don't remember that we actually made a decision.
Well, it's this committee, right? So
Right.
we can redecide it.
Yeah,
Can
Yeah, this time.
can we just make sure that someone moves to add it to the agenda?
I move that we add a reschedule of the next meeting of this committee to avoid conflicting with Yom Kippur. That's what I
I
move.
second it. I don't see an email from this morning. I thought I saw it earlier. I don't know what happened to it.
I can re-forward it to you.
All right,
Okay, please.
yeah.
So was Tuesday the 14th not a possibility then? Was
Tuesday the 14th? No, it could be. It's not part of the holiday.
Then it could.
I think it'll be important for us to meet because of Celebrate Mansfield and all of these other things. So That works for me if we keep it at 6 o'clock.
All right, should we do that?
Sure.
Okay.
Do you need a motion, Monica?
Usually they agree on consensus, so as long as it is agreed to, we should be all set. We just need a motion to add anything to an agenda.
All right.
Is there consensus that Tuesday, the 14th works for everybody at 6? Raise your hands to say yes, so we see. Okay, looks like consensus.
Okay. And then the other questions on this, important dates, holidays for events, were they, I believe at a certain point we talked about, things like Indigenous Peoples Day, things like World Refugee Day. Are there things that we want to make sure we're pushing out Facebook posts about or highlighting, even if we're not going, maybe there's a few that we want to go full town mayoral resolution on, but others that we just might want to, use as an opportunity to say, this is happening, it's important, kind of thing.
It seems like somebody needs to compile a list of possible holidays and then who knows what they mean, and then we can consider them, but I don't know if we all can just pull it out of our head.
Exactly.
Well, there's like
4 million.
World AIDS Day and Human Rights Day, International Human Rights Day. And
I think this sounds like a wonderful job for Felicia. What does everybody else think? Felicia, are you there?
Yeah, sorry, I was,
I think this is just a really good job because other schools already have these lists.
yeah, I can.
Yeah, but they don't have those things on it. They have they have like more of the like no school today because
Right.
I guess you call it more of observances, Helen, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Felicia, would you be willing to do that though?
Sure.
I think it's gonna be a great job. for you.
Great. So I do know the UN, if you go to the UN's website, they have a kind of list of international days that you can look up. So that might be a place to start. And then there, you can dig around for others. And if you can put together just a kind of calendar for us, and then maybe if you want to suggest like a few that you think are particularly important to recognize, I think that would be great.
Right. Sounds good.
Thank you.
And somehow or other I closed my agenda. Oh my God. I'm just on the wrong computer, so I'm not used to it there.
Celebrate Mansfield Festival is the next item.
Thank you. Thank you. And I said I was willing to be there most of the day, I think at this point. I shared some materials that I've used in my classroom before. I don't know if anybody had a chance. The story of human rights comes in lots of languages. It's free. There's actually a video that goes with it. I don't know, Glenn, have you seen this?
Potentially.
It's
I've
not
seen-
a lot of fluff. It's very just, this is what the Declaration of Human Rights are.
So, yeah, if you can, I haven't gotten through my email inbox.
Do you
so
want
I'll
me
take
to
a look
share
at
it? I can share my
there.
screen.
But I also wonder, or so like, I guess the idea is that we'll have a square, or we'll be in the towns. What's the, I guess, what do we have, or what can we have? And
Yeah, so I'll jump in here if I might, Karen.
Sure.
So after the last meeting, I, on behalf of the commission, reserved us a table, which I think is a 10 by 10 spot. We'll need to bring our own table and pop up and all of those kinds of things, but they will assign us a spot. And we discussed, I think it's a priority of the festival to try to be as low waste as possible. So I think they don't, and I don't believe that they want anyone to be doing fundraising per se, if I have that right. But we talked about having some sort of an activity, because they encourage that, right? Something that's engaging for families and adults. And so I think Jane came up with this wonderful idea of mounting a world map and having that be, maybe mounted on an easel or something, and push pins, and people could identify what parts of the world they identify with, where their ancestors came from, where they came from, whatever works. And that we would then try to have, perhaps through a oversized QR code, maybe some sort of a way for people to be able to link to our page on the website, or to materials like what Karen's talking about. We could have a few copies of that, and if people wanted copies in another language, we could follow up with them with that, perhaps. But we also, Barbara felt that maybe we should have some kind of information about what is the commission and what is it that we do. So that might be in the form of a banner or another oversized poster. So we need to, I think, determine what materials we think is appropriate for us to have, what we need to purchase, what we need to create, what we need to copy. I did check through the town manager's office, because the commission is appointed by the town council. There is an account available for us to do a little bit of purchasing, like the world map and things like that, some of the materials for the festival. No one has to go out of pocket on that. We can pay for that.
I wonder if there's something that we could do with the QR code where it's interactive, and we could have a laptop or screen showing something like that too. I don't have to take a look.
Well, we can certainly, if there is a video, for example, that you think might be, someone might stop and watch for a few minutes related to these materials, yeah, we could certainly have a laptop and some
It's
kind of
pretty
connection.
dry. It's pretty dry.
Yeah, well then, that's a decision, but.
Yeah. I was reminded, so I used these materials when I read The Kite Runner with my students. And so, with the Taliban kind of taking over Afghanistan, it's very much been on my mind. And it's so relevant right now. I just wonder if it makes sense to do something with what's going on in the world right now.
It would be interesting if we got a picture of those 800 people sitting on that airplane.
Oh yeah.
That news clip. And then just start a conversation. What do you think this means? Why do you think this happened? Why did those pilots decide to do that? And somebody be willing to ask some questions to anybody, because that is an unbelievable picture.
Just
Right
even
up there with the burning Vietnamese kid.
Yeah, putting up butcher paper, and
With a big
allowing people to
version of that, and just saying, what do you think?
Yeah.
Why did this happen?
Well, I would like to just caution a little bit, right? So we have to be prepared then for a range of responses, and it would have to be monitored and controlled in a way that, obviously that people will have a number of responses, but I also would worry that there might be those who would take it as an opportunity to, reinforce problematic narratives or troll or other. So, I think thinking about how we do this in a way that doesn't exacerbate the concerns. Thinking of some of the responses we got to the survey, for instance, right? There may be reasons to not just put things out there that people might just filter through their standard political lenses. So
if you were to do like a Jamboard or what's the other one? You can filter the responses and approve them before they get posted. But at the same time, I worry about like closing down opportunity for discussion,
Yeah, we can't run away from that, and we can manage it. How about if you hung up that picture and said, take a look at this picture and write a 3 or 4 line poem, then give it to the person who's sitting next to the picture. That way you could monitor what people said and you could hang them up.
Yeah.
I think if you've got some mechanism for somebody to, to moderate that, I think that sounds great. And I agree, these are questions to be engaged, but they're, again, the forum matters here. And I think, allowing people just to scrawl whatever they want may be a problem, as opposed to engaging. I like the idea of engaging them in a conversation. If somebody's standing there, from the commission, and ask people, what do you think of this? And then they can have an actual real conversation.
If I could be sure I would be there, I would do it, but my home life precludes commitments like this too far in advance. Otherwise, I'd do it.
You could do like a haiku or a 6-word
Yeah,
story.
write a haiku, give it to the person next to the board, then that person can decide whether to hang it up or not, or have a conversation with the person who wrote it.
Yeah.
That'd be good.
I also
And I'm
wonder,
guessing that people who have really negative stuff they're not gonna take the time to be creative.
Yeah, you're probably right.
I also wonder if there are any key findings from our survey that we could summarize onto a poster with some images, and they could be provocative images, but just like, here's what Mansfield told us, and kind of report back, even if it's 3 or 4 bullet points, things that might surprise people that relate to this. And so that way we're kind of reminding them, oh yeah, you're the folks that did that survey. And so that is kind of putting the mirror up and reflecting back on them. I mean, I think we need to think about sort of the educational opportunity here, and what is human rights, and what's going on within our own community that reflects the world. So that's another approach to take for engagement tools.
Yeah, I like that a lot, right? Again, we have collected that now, and so we don't need to go to Afghanistan to identify key human rights concerns, although we can't. I think it's good to connect to the global issues as well. But some of what we learned around where people are experiencing discrimination, I think, is what we can highlight, or our findings with regard to the access for people with disabilities to different kinds of town services might be. So and I know this is part of another agenda item and overlaps a little bit with the town charge. Maybe that's a request we can put to them to come up with those bullet points to have for represented, and maybe we represent some of the findings in a data visualization tool would be great.
So I guess it's a matter of reaching out to other people on the commission to get a sign up, who's gonna set up, who's gonna man the booth, who's available for cleanup, and then setting a deadline, because in order to, if we're producing materials, we can go out and buy a world map tomorrow, but if we're actually producing a data visualization of our survey results, somebody's got to do that and send it off to Staples or, whatever we're going to do.
Yeah, I mean, I'm obviously on that committee as well, so I can head up the survey bit. If there are folks, it sounds like we want to create that conversation or an interaction piece, right? As well. So and then if we're going to do the then the sign up for staffing it, it's probably important.
And do we like the world map idea still? Is that something that we should do as another, engagement piece?
I think that's a little less political, which probably is a good thing. And, geography never hurt anybody, right?
Right. Yeah, no, I think that I like that a lot. I also like the kind of conversation piece. So, right, we can have a range of opportunities for, and thinking about different age groups as well.
Oh, that's true. We can have different questions for, different populations.
Does anybody want to volunteer to search for a world map that's sort of innovative or friendly, other than the National Geographic version? I mean, we want something that's kind of clever, or should I just
Shower curtain. Have you seen the shower curtains? That could be kind of fun. It's a good size. And are you thinking like those T pins or colored?
yeah, or the little,
balls?
right, with the colored top, the push pins, that is what
I wonder if there's an interactive map just to kind of have it going at the same time, because it would be kind of cool. Like if there are 50 people from Puerto Rico, you're not going to be able to fit 50 pins in the map, but it would be really cool to see. So I'll look for an interactive one, like an online one.
So then it would exist on a computer screen on the table?
Yeah,
I mean, that's my
bring
only,
our laptop. Yeah.
that's the only drawback to that is that it's not as, doesn't have the presence. I mean, the shower curtain's not a bad idea. People could mark it with a Sharpie, right? It's the whole backdrop to our tent, for example.
But if we were to do an interactive one, we could put it on the website.
Yep.
We could do both. You could have the thing, and then we could translate it into the online interactive one and keep it.
Yeah.
Yeah, great.
All right. So it sounds like, Karen, you're gonna look into online maps and other potential maps. Jane, do you want to work on this conversation piece, conversation starter, engagement with a current event? Design that?
Well, other than what I suggested, what else would you like me to do? Sure, but what?
I guess you're gonna have to find the picture and blow it up.
You're willing to do that? Yeah,
the
I'm willing to do that.
instructions. I mean, it could be that one, it could be another, but yeah, I mean, I think I am again, right? But you'll have to create essentially the instructions for how that
Sure.
that activity is going to work.
Yep.
All right.
There is an interactive one. If we were to create a little online thing, we could certainly just highlight the countries and then put the number of people after the fact. But yeah, I found one. Sorry. Now I closed the agenda again. Look at that. All right. So I think that ends old business, or is there anything else we need to talk about for our old business. Those were the 3 items. So we can move on to new business, and the survey results communication is letter A. So didn't we have one of our young interns doing putting together the survey results?
No, what we had was his summary. He basically created some categories of responses from the individual comments. And then in addition to that, we have the data summaries in a bar graph that's a little hard to interpret because it's so spread out. But I have his statement. I have our joint statement that we wrote a little report, and I was going to give it to the whole committee, not just to this committee, but I can tell everybody what the topics were, or if I can find it in my computer, I can't share my screen, so I'll have to tell you.
Yeah.
Okay, all right, so here's what Derek put together, and he did a really good job. Number one, housing affordability is a huge concern. Glenn, the answer is, you gonna do a screen share? Yeah, sure, I'm happy to. Excuse me, I'm doing 2 things at once and that never works well.
All right.
All right, so number one is housing affordability. That was a huge concern. Lack of affordable housing in Mansfield. And then he went into detail about zoning requirements. Our poverty rate is 22.5%, which is more than double the state average. So that's the housing issue. Then what UConn did as we were writing this thing made it worse. And he talked a little bit about affordable housing in an area that's accessible to public transportation, and the Four Corners area and the Conanville area being good because of the Wyndham Transit District bus stops there. This whole report is only about affordable housing, I'm realizing, so it's not the whole summary of the survey requirements. But he put together all the information about everybody who was concerned about affordable housing. And one of the things we came up with that I think Margaret was very, said we really needed to focus on was that the majority of people of color who work at UConn are in low-paying jobs. They are the people who can't afford to live in Mansfield. Therefore, affordable housing is a civil rights issue as well as a housing issue, and the right to decent housing is a human right. So we have a pretty complicated situation that has overtones of
But that also assumes that they want to live in Mansfield.
That assumes that they want to live in Mansfield, but they can't live in Mansfield now. So whether they want to or not, they're not allowed to. I mean, they can't afford to. Let me put it that way. So there's that whole issue is anybody who makes below a certain amount of money can't afford to live in Mansfield because the majority of housing in Mansfield is single family homes, not rental homes. So that's one result of the survey and Derek's summary of it. The other big one was the lack of ability of the public schools to respond directly to interpersonal conflicts around diversity issues, particularly in the middle school. There were a lot of comments about that. People did not like how their kids were being treated, and they didn't feel like the schools responded. And they weren't talking about policy. They were talking about how students treat each other at the one-to-one level, and the frustration of teachers and their inability to know what to do about it. I guess that's the best way to say it. So that was the other big thing that came out of that survey. I can look up the rest of my notes, but those are the big ones. That people, and then there's a lot of senior people, lack of public transportation. That was another big one. But we don't have anything formally written that summarizes all of the qualitative data that we got out of that survey, because Derek only did the stuff about housing. That was what he was asked to do.
So I think this will be a kind of work in progress as well. I think we had also on the town charge committee engaged a statistician to provide us with some quantitative analysis of the results. So we should be able to add that to the overall report. I think in our communication, I think of the survey results, we kind of want to have two levels. One is to a kind of presentation of the findings, which is fairly like, here's the data and what we can draw from it, and then some analysis or conclusions that we're drawing as a commission. And so, with a survey like this, I don't think we can make we don't have conclusive evidence with regard to the kind of causal factors that may be at play in any of these findings.
Right.
But we can make suggestions along the lines that you indicated. But I think we need to be clear about where the data is ending and our interpretation of that data
Absolutely,
is
absolutely.
beginning.
And I did go through and do some categorization of the qualitative data. I don't have it immediately available, but I can certainly write it up. Because I went through all the qualitative remarks and I did little hatch marks to say how many people worried about this and how many people worried about that. So I've got that. I just didn't write it up because Derek did the housing thing and I didn't do anything else, but I can do it.
And both of those categories of things that you talked about, I think we have to be very sensitive about.
Mhm.
Obviously, the affordable housing piece, the affordable housing study just took place. We just adopted a whole affordable housing plan within the town. And obviously the land acquisition, makes it more complicated. So, but this could be sort of just additional data that might be of import and interest to the council and planning and zoning and other parties. And likewise, I think if there's specific criticisms about the middle school and teachers being unprepared to deal with, I think that that's also sensitive.
Very.
That we might need to really think about how that all gets presented in a public way. So I just, I think they're both, we just need to be careful, I think, about how we present them.
I absolutely agree with you. What I will do in the next few days is to go back with my notes and give the categories and the numbers of people who said various things. And that's just, 15 people said this and 17 people said that. And then you can decide or suggest how we rearrange that in some kind of narrative. But that's about as neutral as it can get. This is what people said, and here's how many people said it. So I can do that because when I went through all those comments, I did that.
Great. Yeah, I think that would be helpful. And again, I think that we've got multiple strands of of unpacking that data that's going on and our ability to compile that in a way that's meaningful and helpful, but exists within the boundaries of what the data is actually telling us, I think is important. For our group. I think it's also, so we'll have this. And what do we want to do with it, right? Who do we want to make sure sees it? What do we want? Do we want to host, at some point we had talked about hosting a dialogue and a discussion about it, right? So to present people with the results and give people an opportunity to reflect and engage in conversation about it. So I don't know if folks have, again, I think we had all, maybe when we had started this, had hoped that by now we'd actually be out of these little boxes and maybe be thinking about getting together in groups and having face-to-face dialogues. That still may be a possibility, but it's certainly not, not without its own fraught consequences. So I know, Jane, you've got your winter plans for the programming. So I don't know if people have thoughts about how this fits into any of that, but that would seem to be, I think, within the charge of this committee's, right? Not just the analysis itself, but what do we do in terms of outreach and communicating those results?
Well, I was waiting to put together the topics till I saw what people were concerned about on the survey. And I've got a suggested list and a request for at least one other person to work with me, so I'm not just talking to myself. And I've got like 5 or 6 topics, and I'm not committed to most of them, but I would like to share them with people. And if we don't have time tonight, fine. If we don't, we'll do it next time. We're still looking at January, February. So
Right.
I've got time. But let me just share with everybody an experience that I had with a Board of Education, Region 19 Board of Education person who had a wonderful conversation with, and she's all very enthusiastic about what we were doing. And when I tried to follow up with her the following week, she suddenly didn't want to talk to me. Period, where there's nothing else to say, she said literally. And I thought, oh, something has occurred between then and now. I have no idea what it was, but it was very clear that she wasn't going to be enthusiastic anymore. So there's some background stuff going on that makes it even more important to be as sensitive and delicate as possible without going down for the count and pretending nothing's wrong. But I couldn't believe the change in the tone of the conversation. It just astounded me.
Well, we know this territory has only gotten more fraught
Right.
over the summer. So I think we will continue, as you say, to act with care and sensitivity, but also with clarity about what our purpose is and where our values are. So.
So Jane, you're gonna take on some of the qualitative.
Yeah, I will write up a summary, and
Okay.
Glenn, should I send it to you to send to everybody, or how do you want to do that? Monica?
Monica, yeah, and then
And I
the
will
town
clearly
charge.
mark it draft.
Yep.
I think I can do that tomorrow.
Special Town of Mansfield webpage on Indigenous Peoples Day.
We had talked at the last meeting about what we should be as a commission doing to celebrate Indigenous Peoples Day. Obviously, the town council issued a proclamation, as a result of the Human Rights Commission making recommendation for this change. And I think, what more should we be doing to celebrate and mark this day? And, should we be coordinating with the library to do a program? Should we be trying to do some kind of support to the school district for, some education in the schools? But one thing that did surface is that, as with the case of Pride Month, we do have the ability to create a special page on the website, if we choose, that could mark the fact that this is the first Indigenous Peoples Day in Mansfield. Here's a copy of the proclamation. Here are some links to resources about Indigenous Peoples Day and why this is, important. We can sort of do with it whatever we want, and then it becomes a device for distributing information. Obviously, if it also becomes the day that we do the MLK mural, we could do some cross-purposing with that as well. And I think, had talked last meeting about even doing a brief history about the Indigenous people of Mansfield, and whether this is something that, whether our student interns are interested in taking that on, or whether we reach out to the Historic Society. But maybe we want to link to some some information about that. So it was an idea of something simple that we could execute around Indigenous Peoples Day, but it certainly doesn't necessarily have to be the only thing that we do if we intend to celebrate it. We may have enough on our plate with this MLK mural, trying to get that done in time. But it just seemed like we shouldn't let it pass without trying to do something, that followed up the work that the commission did to get it passed, so. And I'm willing to create the page. I don't know that I want to generate all the content for the page. I mean, if other people wanted to contribute, and then I would just, put it together.
This is something that maybe we want to see if both student interns want to, come up with something. And then, the full commission can focus a little bit more on the MLK mural project, and then we can, bring it together at our next meeting in September.
Yeah, sure. I can talk to Derek.
Great. And I do like the idea of connecting with the schools, again, recognizing that the origin of the proposal started with, one of the middle school students. And so, perhaps there's some outreach that can happen to the schools to see if there's ways we can support anything that they're doing. I do recognize, we do have a lot on our plate, and so it would be nice if we could just coattail on things that other parts of the town have and contribute in a supporting way rather than to be the lead on. So I can reach out to see if what they have planned and if there's ways that we can participate and support in that, both on the school side and the library side.
I'm just wondering, I'm kind of looking while I talk, we're part of kind of this, at least since I was a kid, this resurgence, right, of Native peoples, and resurgence is probably not the right word, or I'm trying to think of how to, the resurgence of the respect and the honoring of our Indigenous people in this part of the state, especially with for what it's worth, the casinos, but more importantly, like the Mashantucket Pequot Museum. There's a ton of resources there. The pushback on, finally making changes to mascots. And it just seems like maybe there could be something connecting with some of the folks out of the museum there who might be interested in providing outreach to schools. Like, it just feels like it's bigger than what we can do, and what the interns should be doing. Like, there are already people who are experts, and
yeah, but I think that's true. There is a function though, and maybe this is something to explore with Ryan and the mayor, of some government to government outreach, right? These are sovereign tribal communities. These are not, just organizations. And so the appropriate approach from, a town like ours would be for our town manager or our mayor to offer us a government to government communication I think Mashantucket, Mohegan, Eastern Pequot, and Nipmuc all have, historic roots in this area. And so maybe that's something that would mark this, if we recognize that last time, on this one, it may be appropriate for the mayor to be doing some direct outreach to those communities to offer to open up. And then from there, they can bless any sort of collaboration with entities but the kind of appropriate protocol to observe, again, respecting Native sovereignty would be at that level, I think.
I like that very much.
Yeah, I like that too. And I think the other thing is, the fact that there's an area in Connecticut that, like, there are arbitrary lines in the town lines or whatever you want to call them, right? That the lines that create the town of Mansfield are as arbitrary as the lines that house any of these tribal lands, because they're all tribal lands. But I do like the idea of that, respecting, like having our mayor reach out. I think that gives it the respect it deserves.
Great. So I can follow up then with Ryan and Mayor Moran about that.
So should we plan to do a web page that has resources and has some reference to this? I mean, even if it's just to reiterate the proclamation, and I think we could do something with it.
Yeah, I support that.
Yeah. Same.
Okay, so Margaret, you're able to work. I know Felicia and Derek are gonna start generating some content. Do you need somebody else to also work with you on setting this up?
I think, I guess what I can do is just a draft of what I would include there, based on what we have presently, and maybe share a draft out in non-designed form, but just in copy form. And then Felicia and Derek could kind of do the same, and then we can see how the two, mesh. And I'm thinking, September will probably be busy, but obviously it would be nice to have it out, the week before Indigenous Peoples' Day. I mean, the sooner the better, but I'm not sure how realistic it will be to have it out in the middle of September. So, but I think we just need to gather what we can and go from there.
Great.
Yeah. The last
I think
point.
Monica's trying to get in.
I just wanted to suggest, I don't know if this was just implied, but I wanted to make sure that the next meeting we will have what the student volunteers compiled and what Margaret compiled, whether that's together or not. And then the full commission will have to vote on it in order for it to be posted, I think would be the best
Okay.
way
So
for
that takes us
FOI.
beyond, or that takes us to that very week, right?
September 9th?
No, but if it has to be, because we meet after the next meeting.
Right. So this will have to be generated in between then. So this subcommittee won't get a preview look at it, although we could weigh in informally based on drafts circulated ahead of time. And then the full commission would do the formal approval of what was going to be posted.
Right, because our October meeting is 2 days after.
Or we could call a special meeting and do that as well.
Yeah, if we
Have
felt
our
like
special meeting.
we wanted to, but I, probably we could, again, if we're just kind of offering informal comments on drafts that are circulating and they're not being formally approved, right? That's okay to do via, no?
No, freedom of information would say no to that because that is collaboration
Ah,
without public knowing. So what would have to happen is you could send it all to me and I could send it out to all of you and you could review it. But your comments would not be able to go.
We can't
to
exchange
me like
comments.
that.
Got it. Okay, so why don't we plan this, right? So you can send it to all of us. And if anybody feels like they need to discuss it
Mhm.
before our full commission meeting, we can call a special meeting.
Yeah, and to my knowledge, because Derek and Felicia are not actually a part of the commission, I don't think that they doing this work for it would matter in that way, at least to my knowledge.
They
I could
can
be wrong.
collaborate all they want, right? So, yeah.
Mhm. That's
Just to clarify, like what exactly is this consisting of? Just I don't know.
I think Margaret's going to send you a template of
Okay.
the
Mhm.
kinds of content that we're
Right.
looking for, and
Okay.
then you'll fill in the blank. And again, it's not like a dissertation, so
Right.
we're looking for the website content that people can engage in, and maybe links to additional resources as well.
right.
Yeah, a little bit of
Yep.
maybe some notes on, what is on that website. So annotate it. Then just get it.
And I mean, I'd say something that's like are available to people of all like ages and like education levels. So try to keep it simple, but and not too like,
That was one of the things that people complained about on the survey, was that people who didn't have very fancy educations were discriminated against in this town.
Just got really good guidance on educators sending text messages and like 6 bullet points on what they need to consider. It was really cool on how to be precise yet simplify yet be precise. It was kind of cool. Anyway, I think a lot of people are going to learn a lot from that. The equity statement.
So that was sent out again in this morning's email, but it looks like some of you might not have gotten it. And I'm sorry, it was supposed to be sent out yesterday, but it got really busy at the end of the day. So I don't know if we want to maybe table that, or you can bring your comments to the next full commission meeting, because I know that was something that town charge, I think Amy's working on that with both Derek and Felicia.
I have a question. I just read through it right before the meeting, and what I had was a compilation of equity statements from places all over the state. I didn't see anything that was particular to Mansfield. And what did I miss?
The first 2 paragraphs. I believe that was the draft statement.
Okay, because I just kept going, and I thought, why is all this on here? This isn't a single statement. I'll go back and look at the beginning.
I was confused too when I was working on it a while ago, but it's just the one at the top.
Okay, thank you. That's all I wanted to know.
I mean, I definitely haven't had a chance to look at it, so I think we probably ought to table it for now.
Okay, it's fine with me.
Yeah. Same. So what do we want to put on for our next meeting? What kind of old business? What do we want to continue?
Do we have one more agenda item?
Mhm.
Yes.
Oh, am I not looking for the right one again?
It's community conversations. This is
Yeah.
what Jane's been working on, topics and volunteers.
Yes.
Shall I speak?
Sure.
All right. So I went through the surveys and I compared it to what I did when I worked with the town of Suffield to do this. And I came up with 6 potential topics for public conversation. 2 of them are based on how good the speakers were and that the topics are generic. And then the other ones are based on what I saw in the survey. There's a woman in Boston whose name I forget, but I can find, who wrote a book called Waking Up White. And I don't know how much she cost, but she was fantastic because she just talked about being raised in someplace outside of Boston and not having any idea what white was. And then she wrote this book about her evolving awareness of it. She's a very good speaker. She's a former teacher and she just engages the audience. So that's one subject. And then there's another one on interpersonal communication that's called 6 Degrees of Separation. And it's about how we all have so much more in common than different. And that was done by a woman who's on the faculty of Bay Path, also very good. So those are the 2 I've seen before. The other subjects that came to mind were farming in Connecticut, because we in CORE have been talking to local farmers. And I thought it might be good. There's, oh God, I don't remember the names. The people who own that huge farm up on, what is?
Stearns?
Stearns. The daughter of Stearns made a very good point, and she knows how farms work. She said, there's a huge difference between who owns the farms and who works on the farms. And the people who work on the farms are all fairly low paid people, mostly Latino people. And the people who own the farms kind of run a whole lot of stuff around here. So I thought maybe we could do something about what's it like to farm in Mansfield and who is involved. And that's one subject that occurred to me. Then another one was growing up gay in Eastern Connecticut, because we have a wonderful director of youth services in Mansfield, and she's very familiar with this. And I thought maybe we could get some kind of a high school drama group to act out some stuff, and then engage the audience in conversation about what it's like to be them at this time in their lives. And then the last one that I came up with, and I mean, like I said, this is all wide open. Oh, I have 2 more. One is about special needs of students in the schools. How do people with special needs in Mansfield get their needs addressed? And that's wide open to almost any subject. And then the final one was, what's the history of African Americans living in Northeastern Connecticut? And we have a wonderful person named Donna Dufresne who does a Prudence Crandall monologue that's great. And we have Pat Wilson Phineas, who is an African American person whose family history goes way back in this area. And I thought we might be able to put together something about the history of African Americans in this area and just inform people of who was here and how'd they get here and why does it matter. And we could tune that into the Witness Stone project if we wanted to. So those are the topics I've come up with at the moment, and it's still wide open and very flexible. But what I really want, I'm going to have to do 2 things. I need at least one other person who can work with me to help me think and to help work with the arrangements. I've talked to the library director, who says she's more than willing to let us use all of her technology, and she'd be very happy to give us the tech person to set up these public Zoom conversations. And then we need to get some money. And I wrote down every single name that came up in the previous conversation about who gives money to things like that. And so I need somebody to help with making kind of proposals to some of these funding organizations. I'm guessing we need around $10,000 to pay speakers and also maybe reimburse the library for some of their tech stuff, but I'm not sure about that. So that's where I am right now. And I'm shooting for a middle to the end of January and every other week till the middle of March, because it's dull, boring, and cold and nobody wants to go out. And so we might be able to get a decent conversation about some subjects that interest people and speak to their concerns, as we say. So that's where I am. And the first thing I'm looking for is who else is interested in this and would anybody else like to work with me? And Barbara has said she would, but I'm more than happy to have anybody else. And it doesn't necessarily have to be from this committee, but this is obviously the place to start. Oh, and I've also spoken to Core Mansfield and Shannon Hirsch. Zion, I told her I would just snag her into it because she knows everybody in the universe. So responses, interest in participating. What
I'm
do you think?
definitely interested. I just don't think I have the time.
Don't overwhelm yourself. I'm spreading this as a very wide net, and I am going to get at least one person at a core who isn't an official member of the council but knows everybody, and that will be helpful. I also coincidentally have had some very interesting conversations with the president of Liberty Bank lately personally, because of how badly they handled the loan application. And by the time I got through talking to him, we just kind of knew each other. So I'm planning on talking to him too. I am impressed with his commitment to making the world a better place. So I think that might be a good conversation. But is there anybody, I mean, if you can't do it, I understand, because I know how the limits on my life are. But, and I am gonna hit up Barbara when she comes back. But is anybody else interested in getting involved with this right now? Because now I've got to say, I've got to make up a list and say, we need to do all these things in this order on this schedule.
I
And
think
there's
probably
a resounding silence, so that's perfectly understandable.
exactly. I think you should work with Barbara for right now.
Yeah, I'm
Again,
gonna work with Barbara.
But I would say, I like the idea of you forming a working group along with folks who are outside of the commission
Oh, good,
to
thank you.
support this activity. I think that sounds like a really good idea. It's been working well on the mural project. And that, accomplishes a range of objectives. One is, right, you get some help without having to tax other commission members who may be overscheduled. But two, you build in an audience, right? I mean, part of what we want to make sure we're doing is attracting, and so finding people who have constituencies. And I know you have good contacts with the faith communities. I think those are going to be good audiences for this as well. And I know, given your topics, pulling somebody from the schools in, again, doesn't need to be a, front office principal superintendent, but even if they're, I know there are teachers involved in core, if they're in there as well for some of these, would make a lot of sense. So.
Okay, I'll put together a little committee, and I will also reach out to Leah from the NAACP and see if there's anybody who wants to get involved. They're very busy fighting with the government of Putnam right now. And it's an overwhelming fight, but they're doing a good job. So I don't know who else they have who wants to do this, but thank you for telling me to do that. I will go ahead and do that.
I think the topics are great, Jane. I love your list of topics. Really diverse and obviously very, rich. There's a lot of issues to be mined there. I also would suggest that maybe through Amy, or maybe we go through the front office at E.O. Smith. It's right. Seniors still have to participate in capstone projects or whatever it is they call it at E.O. Smith. So I'm thinking that, if you get some of these seniors early in the school year who are still maybe floundering around looking for a topic, for them to take on a public service project and part of it, if I recall correctly, I mean, Glenn's got more recent experience and Karen than I, but the fact that there was a paper component, right? They needed to write a report, they need to do some public service, and they need, there's another part of it. But this could be a great, nice little jewel in the crown for a senior project.
Thank you. Is there somebody do they all have to do it, or is there one person in charge, or is it a department, or how does it work?
The person in charge varies, I think, each year.
Yeah, each different. I know everyone has to do a project, and then each of them, there's groups of them that have different advisors. So
Alicia, is there a particular person that you think would be a good person for me to talk to?
I don't know how it works. I'm not a senior.
You're not a okay.
But
right, I'll have to figure that out.
Heather Evans might know, or someone might. I don't know.
Or
Amy
Amy knows all this stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
I would say Sean Sanasier, he's a history guy.
Yeah.
Local and.
What's his last name?
Sanasier.
Spell it.
No. Sant. I don't remember. Sorry.
S-A-N.
History department. Okay.
Kind of the way it sounds. SANICERRE. or something like that. You could go on their directory and.
Oh, I got it. Okay, that's French. All right.
But he also has 2 of his own kids who just graduated. He's just really connected. I don't know, he gets involved in lots of things, so he might be busy, but he can kind of direct you.
Well, all I need is for him to say, this student would like to do this. I don't necessarily need him to do anything.
Well, I think different educators probably have a different group of students, but because he's in the history department, he can
Yeah.
probably connect you with other adults.
It just occurred, well, I'm going to talk to Ms. Stearns, whose first name I forget, to round that group up.
Is that
Because I think, and she's got somebody in the, it's not the Farm Bureau, but it's the equivalent at UConn. And we've done a couple of really good conversations with them for core. So I think I can find people to do that. Okay. Thank you.
Stacy-
Thank you.
Stacy Stearns.
Thank you.
And she works at Cooperative Extension.
That's right. And that's the department that has all the skills and everything. Yeah, she's really good. Thank you. I will keep you posted. I'm finished.
I think we don't have any public comments, right? So can somebody move to adjourn, or is there anything else that we haven't touched on?
Move to adjourn.
Second.
We are adjourned. Until next time. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Everybody.
Have
Yep.
a good night.
See you soon.
Bye-bye.